Welcome to the Straight Talk on Fleet podcast with Erin Gilchrist. Each week, Erin will be breaking down fleet management, trying to cut through the noise and get down to the real issues safety and operations leaders are struggling with every day. The goal will be to get to the bottom of how leaders can break down these silos of information, accelerate change management, how to use real-time, accurate data to drive massive efficiencies across fleet-focused business processes, and to elevate people's careers with emerging best practices. Now it's time for the Straight Talk on Fleet.
Hello again, Fleet community. We're back for another episode of the Straight Talk on Fleet. I'm Erin Gilchrist-Rugg, and I am the VP of Fleet Evangelism for IntelliShift. Fleet management's hard, so what I try to do is break it down fleet manager style, and I bring you relevant content for the fleet community so we can grow and learn together and elevate our careers. So today we are coming to you from NTEA's Work Truck Show 2023 in Indy. More specifically from the Knapheide booth. Our friends at Knapheide are celebrating 175 years in business, and they've been gracious enough to let us use their booth today to film our 26th Straight Talk on Fleet episode. So I am thrilled to introduce my friend, our guest, a friend and colleague, Mike Camnetar. Mike is the Fleet Services Manager for General Mills, and if you don't know who General Mills is, you're probably living under a rock. General Mills is a food producer. They produce some of the world's most iconic brands like Cheerios and Chex and the like. And what they like to say is they make the food that the world loves. So I know I love their food. And Mike is the current president of NAFA Fleet Management Association, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So welcome, Mike. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yes, it's great to be here.
This is awesome. So, okay, a question I always like to start with in my interviews is this idea of how we got into fleet. I don't think any of us set out to be a fleet manager. So tell us your journey. How'd you get into the fleet industry?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So my parents were actually in the car business and worked in dealerships. And so when I was 18, I got a job at a dealership as the courier. So my job was they gave me a brand new car, and I got to drive around to go to the bank every day and deliver titles and paperwork and all that kind of stuff while I was going to college. And I was an accounting major in college at the time. And so it was a pretty high turnover business. Well, I got to know a lot of people when you're dropping things off and picking things up and so forth. It was kind of an exciting job to have. I remember on Monday mornings going to the bank, I would have so much cash in my car that I would have to make 2 trips into the bank which was really scary if I think about it now. So I'd bring a whole ring of cash, drop it off at the teller's desk, and go back to the car and bring in more cash. So they didn't have an armored truck or anything. So I guess they really trusted me.
Yes, they were entrusting you with a big, big job, lots of cash.
Yeah, so that was interesting. So I started my career in the car business as an accountant, and I worked my way up. And by the time I was 24, I was actually the treasurer of 3 of the dealerships that I worked for. Excellent. And it was fun. I learned a lot about the car business, and of course I knew all the ins and outs of holdback and all the things that we do from an accounting side because I had to account for it. And I was at a function for my wife's company one day, and the president of the company came up to me and he asked me what I did, and he says, "Hey, I might have a job for you. I need somebody to run our fleet." And I'm like, okay. I don't know anything about fleet, and he goes, you have a card. And I gave him my card, and I was like, yeah, this is one, I probably won't hear from this guy. Well, 3 days later, he calls me at work and he's like, "What are you doing for lunch?" And I was like, "Well, I guess I'm meeting you today for lunch," So I went and had lunch with him, and he was like, "Come be our fleet manager." Or, we have all these vehicles all over. We have an individual that was with the company, been there a really long time, kind of worked his way up as a mechanic, but the company had gone from regional to national. And his expertise was he could tell you how to fix every part on a car, but from a business side, he wanted somebody with a business acumen who knew the numbers and that type of thing. So I took the job because the car business was 6 days a week and it was not a lot of fun. And just kind of got burned out. And so I took this fleet manager role with a company in New Orleans, a coffee service company. And I was their fleet manager.
Coffee service.
Yeah.
That's just yummy.
So I had all these delivery vans and all that kind of stuff. And so a funny story is I was on the job for 2 months. And my office was in downtown New Orleans, a couple of blocks from the convention center. And so I'm driving into work, and they're putting up these little banners, and it says, "Welcome NAFA Fleet Management Convention." And I was like, what's
Wait,
that?
I do fleet management.
Yeah, I was like,
What is this?
there's like a group that does this stuff, And so
How cool.
so I told my boss, I'm like, hey, they're having some kind of fleet convention at the convention center. Can I go? And he was like, oh, sure. So that was my first NAFA experience.
Wild.
And
you
so,
just stumbled across
yeah,
NAFA.
no, it was literally like I knew nothing about it.
Okay, what year was that?
That would have been 1998 or 99. So 1998 or 99. I think it was 1999, to be honest.
Wow, that's so fantastic because most of us came across NAFA so we could learn how to do fleet. Because nobody kind of grows up to be a fleet manager. You stumble into it, and you kind of did, but more so from a family car business. But this idea of just running into the convention, literally.
Yeah, and I felt really out of place because
So cool.
I was 24. And so I thought people were much older than I was there, and I think people were looking at me like, "Who brought their kid to the conference?" So it was really
Nice.
intimidating. But I met so many people there, and really the value I got out of it is like all of a sudden I'm like, wow, all these people are doing the same thing that I'm doing, and everybody was so open and sharing of like what's working, what's not working, and the experiences that they had. So I met so many people, and I was like, wow, this is great. And then I went to the classes and I learned things in the classes as well. And I've been to every INE since then, except for like one over my career.
So this idea of you walking into your first NAFA conference sort of unannounced and unplanned and describing it then as super collaborative and everybody was kind and welcoming and helpful, that's still true today.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think it's gotten even more so. And I know my experience with NAFA over years has been so much that I've created friendships and met new colleagues and learned so much and grew up as a fleet manager with NAFA's help. Yeah. So that's so cool, like how you attended your first NAFA conference and how you got into fleet. That's super fun.
I had no idea I knew fleets were a bunch of vehicles, but like how do things work and like what to do and what not to do was all new to me.
I swear when people say, what do you do? I'm a fleet manager. They think like airplanes. I'm like, no, really, fleets of cars. And then I just name a few brands that they see driving around on highways and byways. They're like, oh, okay. So what do you do with all those vehicles? And it's so fun to explain it because it's such an integral part of transportation and business and service execution. We touch a little bit of everything.
For sure.
So back to NAFA for a second. So great stories about your getting started in fleet. So how was NAFA, kind of what role was NAFA played in your life as a fleet leader?
So it really helped me understand, what's best practices, what I should be doing. And so one of the things I did as well a couple of years in is I signed up for the CFM, program. So I signed up for it. And apparently I scored pretty well on the thing because then someone from NAFA reached out and said, would you like to be on our certification committee? And so I was actually the last person to take the case study. So I had to do all 8 sections of questions, and then I had to write a 20-something page paper on this fictitious fleet. And so I was one of the last people to do that, and they were super impressed by my paper, which I was like, okay. And so they asked me to join the CFM committee. It was the certification board at the time. So in that role, since I did have a financial background, they assigned the financial management section to me. So I actually got to write the questions. And so when you're writing questions and you're having to go in front of people and teach those things, you really have to know the materials really well. So I felt like that made me even better because you had to learn them at another level. So
and you had to think about all the things that apply to you and that might apply to others that you're not currently, working on or handling yourself. It's so cool because, for the listeners and watchers out there, these certifications that NAFA offers help fleet leaders kind of wrap their head around all the aspects of fleet management. So if you're wanting to learn more about that, you can definitely go to the NAFA website to learn more about the CAFM and CAFS certifications and other educational things. So yeah, they roped you in from the get.
Yeah. So and I have my own, like, I call it my NAFA family because I have all these friends and people that I've known over the years that I only see at INE or I only see at NAFA events, and I haven't taught the CAFM thing in the last 2 years, but I taught it for about 10 years. So almost a good half of the people in the industry have sat through one of my classes. So it was really helpful later on in my career when I went to be, I know you call it the dark side, but I call it like the selling side of the business. I knew a lot of people. It was great because people would actually answer my phone calls and
Yeah.
let me in for appointments and things like that. So
That's
it became really
cool.
beneficial from that side as well. And I just enjoyed it. And I'm just one of those people that I like to give something back. So
Yeah.
if I take, I feel like I should always just give something back. So it's been really great to speak in front of people and just teaching classes and getting to know people and just helping people solve problems, So, I mean,
Yeah.
because that's what we all do, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too, just this idea of, feeling compelled to volunteer. You were sort of roped in at first, but then you spent 10 years doing it. So you were learning, teaching others. So it looks like NAFA has played such a huge role in your education and certainly in your development as a fleet leader. And, and thank you for all those years of service, because I've certainly benefited from those myself over the years, learning and growing as a fleet leader for so many years. So as the current president of NAFA, by the way, that's so exciting. Congratulations.
It is. Thank you.
Good for NAFA, good for all of us as a fleet community. Talk about some of your goals for NAFA for this coming year, serving as the new president.
Well, so NAFA has a strategic plan that we put in place every 3 years. And actually in June, we're back here in Indianapolis for our June board meeting. And we will work on what our strategic goals will be for the next, 3 to 5 years. Some of the ones that I'm super passionate about is our education. Is I want our education to be the best of the best. And it's the standard of education in the fleet industry. Mm-hmm. And the other piece that I feel very passionate about, since I've been on both sides of the industry, is I don't like the concept of, well, you're a fleet manager and then you're selling something. I feel like we're all fleet professionals and we're all in this industry together, and we all actually need each other and depend on each other to be successful in our careers. So it was interesting because when I shifted, it was oh, you're on that side of the business. And so I didn't like that. And I don't think that's a welcoming, it's a welcoming position to have. And I don't think that's what NAFA should be portrayed as. So I want to make sure that we intentionally spend our time welcoming, because NAFA is not just, yes, it's fleet managers, but it's the fleet profession. So without fleet managers, there is no salespeople, there's no fleet profession. It's a whole business that we're in of managing vehicles.
And so many of us have so much to offer. I love shooting this podcast. I am no longer a fleet manager. However, I'm selling, not selling. I am working for IntelliShift, and we do driver safety and fleet intelligence and data platform. And I have so much to offer as a fleet manager. I'm helping IntelliShift be better at what we do. I'm sharing information that's valuable to fleet leaders that I've learned over the years from NAFA and from other professionals. So I always feel at home at NAFA personally because spent so much time working with NAFA, still do today, looking forward to the new format for our chapters. So it's exciting stuff. So a little bit about you as a fleet leader. So, I mentioned group that Mike is the fleet manager for General Mills. So some of your goals for 2023, what's keeping you up at night? What are some of the challenges? How do you plan on solving them? There's a lot of challenges right now.
And that's one of the things I actually love and why I've stayed in the fleet industry, because there's always a challenge. There's always something changing. There's always something new. It's not the same job every day. There's always some fun and exciting thing happening in everybody's fleet every day.
And sometimes not so fun and exciting, but it's challenging and keeps us on our toes, and we keep learning and growing and elevating ourselves.
And it gives us lots of really good stories to tell sometimes too. So,
absolutely.
But the things that my challenges for 2023 really is, we've been through all the supply chain issues where I think we're kind of coming out of that, and things are getting a little bit better. But now it's really trying to contain the cost of our program. If you look back, fuel is down a little bit, but it's still higher than it has been.
Absolutely.
Look at things like interest rates. Wow. We've operated probably for the last 10 years where it's money is almost free. So you don't really, when your interest rate is under 1% or something like that, it's you don't really think about it, but that's not where we are today as an industry.
Especially when there's so many other competing priorities.
So we're getting hit with interest costs on our vehicles, which again, in the past, you didn't worry about if a vehicle sat somewhere for a month or two. Now it's costing you a significant amount of money when things tend to sit. And really and also the same vehicles that we may have paid $22,000 for, 3 years ago is now $30,000, So one of the things that I've had to do internally is make sure I educate the folks that I support of this is the direction the costs are going, and
Right.
you have to be aware of that, because so there's no sticker shock or surprise, because it's this for the same thing we're providing to. I mean, there's inflation everywhere, but it's real on the fleet side, and it's in all of those sectors. So I spent a lot of time this year just educating folks to say this is what's coming, and we've had a really great resale market the last couple of years. So we've made some really good money, and actually our fleet expense was our depreciation was negative for a while in our company because of such a great
Feels
resale
good, doesn't
market.
it?
But on the flip side, that's not going to last forever,
Right.
and we're back to reality and back to a new world, and it's only going to get more complicated when we look at shifting to electrification, or if there's certain mandates that are coming out that we have to be an electric, in certain markets and so forth. So that's not going to get any easier, and it's not going to get any cheaper.
Yep.
So I want people to understand that, so that and I feel like that's my role as a fleet expert in my organization, is to educate people on what's happening, so that they know.
Well, and I like the idea of looking at what we can't control, but then initiating programs that help us offset those increasing costs. And I talk about it all the time on my podcast, that we can only control so much, but what we can control is the way that our drivers operate behind the wheel, and where we buy fuel, and how we maintain our vehicles for longevity and get the most out of our drivers and our vehicles and our assets and our operators. And I always find that putting safety, if you build for safety, everything else falls in line. But I love this idea of just you spending time educating your organization on what fleet's about, what's happening, what's now, increases in costs. So keeping the internal support team, up to speed. And I think that's so important. I do talk a lot about difficulty in change management as fleet leaders. But I think when you have that team together in your organization and building sort of you could call it a safety committee or a fleet committee inside of your organization, it keeps everybody kind of on the same page and up to speed. So that's a great goal for 23. What about personally? What's going on? What do you want to do personally this year?
So actually, it was funny when you mentioned that, because so my goal this year was to just get as healthy as I possibly can. I'm down 14 pounds, and I know everybody does the it's New Year's and I'm going to make all these resolutions, but no, I'm one of those kind of people, if I set a goal or I set a target, I'm going to stick to it until I get to that point. So it's March, and I'm still not having sugar drinks, and I'm still at the gym. In fact, I'll be there in a couple hours, 3 times a week. So really 2023 is kind of it's selfish, but it's kind of about me. It's
it's not selfish.
Let me focus on me this year, and so forth, and let me, make sure that I'm in good shape, because as we all get older, that's very important. So, so that's been my
I love it.
One of my huge goals for this year, and it's paying off already.
It's good. It's so funny. I was shooting one of my first podcasts. I was talking about sustainability, and I started with how do we stay sustainable as fleet leaders? And I dialed it back, and I said, hold on, let's talk about us first. Let's talk about how do we stay relevant? How do we stay fit? And when I think of the word fit, I think of mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all the things. How do we, achieve that? And that's one of my major goals this year too. So we're gonna have to encourage each other, and hold each other accountable. I think that really helps when you have a team of people around you doing this. Another friend of ours, David Hayward, from ABM, he is doing the same thing. So I get a text from David every week, hey, how's it going? So we'll have to get you in. We'll have a group text.
David and I David's on my program as he's on a similar journey. And so when I do my weigh-ins at my gym, I send him screenshots to show him where I'm going.
This is what our community is all about.
To try to make him hey, where are you at? So, and he's beating me, but it's all good.
But hey, a little healthy competition never hurts. Fleet community, this is so fun. I love it. I just want to thank Mike for spending time with us. I really want to thank him for your service with NAFA and helping us be better at what we do every day. So Fleet community, if you found this content enjoyable, I'm sure you did, share it with your community, like and subscribe wherever you find your favorite content. But as we like to say on the Straight Talk on Fleet, until next time, keep it real, keep it safe for Fleet's sake. Thanks again, Mike.
All right.
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Pleasure.